friends, welcome back to Liz's Reading Corner, or welcome if you're new here. I'm Liz and I like books, and in this video we are doing a, I guess, sort of reading challenge. I asked my husband to choose my reads for a week, or the books for me to read for a week, and we'll see how that goes. I sent him the Goodreads most popular books for 2024 and just told him to choose anything that he wants me to read from that list. There was no caveats, there was no rules. It was just choose 5 books and I will read them and hopefully get through them all. Hopefully. I don't have any of them on me yet. I have to figure out where I can get them from and whether my library has them. But the books that he chose were, I'm just going to put them here. Bride by Ali Hazelwood. Heartless Hunter by Kristen, I'm going to butcher this last name, Ciccarelli. Butchered it, I'm sorry. Home is Where the Bodies Are by Geneva Rose. I was actually really excited when he chose this one because I've wanted to read this book for just such the longest time. So now I finally actually have an excuse to actually read it. Quicksilver by Callie Hart. And She's Not Sorry by Mary Kubica. So those are my 5 books that I'm going to be reading this week. A little bit concerned, I'm not going to lie, about a couple of them. I don't normally read Ali Hazelwood. Quicksilver is not a book that I would typically pick up. And yeah, just those two. Those two are really the only ones that I'm concerned about. Heartless Hunter actually looks pretty... Oh, I'm basing my judgment. I haven't actually read them. So my rule for this, I should have said at the start, my rule for this is to go into them completely blind. I am not reading any blurbs. I'm not finding out what they're about. This is just going to be me going in blind just to see what they're like. So fingers crossed, I'll be with you again very shortly to read the first book, I guess. Here we go. It is Sunday. I am on, so that makes it what, day 3? We started Friday, of reading my husband's picks for my week. And so far we've just had 2 3 stars. I finished reading Bride by Ali Hazelwood. This was a little bit surprising. I absolutely thought it was going to be worse than what it was. The whole premise behind it, I actually really, really like. I felt it was a little bit Twilight-ish, but so it kind of reads a little bit like Twilight fan fiction, if I'm honest, now that I think about it. But anyway, it wasn't terrible. There was a lot less smut in there than I expected. My hair is doing its own thing. But yeah, it wasn't overall as bad as I had expected. So take that how you will. And I just finished, I should remember this, I'm not doing good. I just finished reading She's Not Sorry by Mary, who is it? Mary Kubica? I should have absolutely checked the pronunciation on that. Which is a crime-ish sort of story. I'm going to say it's crime. It's not thriller. Yeah. Basically, we just follow the story of this ICU nurse who is taking care of this patient who they initially thought jumped off of a bridge, but she's maybe not jumped off of a bridge, and it just follows her through. There's also like a serial killer and rapist stalking the streets. I can't remember what city. I think it was Chicago. I'm possibly wrong. I have to double check that. I literally just finished it. And I can't even remember what town it's, a city it's set in. That's terrible. And yes, there's also a serial killer and rapist who is stalking the streets and unaliving women who walk home on their own at night, and she happens to walk to and from work alone because she's divorced. And yeah, there's a few plot twists in there, but it's a little bit too flowery for me. There's too much description for the type of book that it is. Like, there's just too much. And so I think it probably would have benefited from being, I don't know, 100 or so pages shorter than what it was. Like, overall it was good. The twist was pretty good. I enjoyed the twist, but there was just a lot of waffle. And so that is 2 of the 5 books that my husband has chosen, and now I am about to read The Crimson Moth. Now I'm about to read The Crimson Moth, so I am starting that tonight. We'll see how we go. I don't know that I'm gonna like this one. I've read like 2 pages and I'm already just kind of over it, so we'll see how we go. The lighting's not great, but we're just gonna have to make do with what we've got. So I have my coffee and my lemon butter toast and my tablet, and I'm going to read through, what am I reading? The Scarlet Moth. I'm really not enjoying it. I'm like 50 or 60 pages in and really struggling. Honestly, this is probably, I understand this is meant to be, or I believe it's meant to be, an adult book. Like, it's written for adults, but this is probably one of the most juvenile feeling writing I've read in a little while. Like, it just feels like, I don't know, it just feels like a teenager wrote it. It doesn't feel like an adult wrote it. It just feels very juvenile. That's only, I don't know how else to explain it. So I have a feeling this is going to be the first one that I really don't like. I want to try and get it finished today. We are going away on Friday, so we're going camping for the first time. And I have an assignment due on Friday, so I want to try and get my assignment finished before we go away. But we'll see how we go. I want to try and I'll see if I get it finished today, because I have 2 more books to read after this one. I'm pretty sure one of them's only going to take like a few hours to read. What have I got left? I don't even remember what I've got left. So I've still got Quicksilver and Home is Where the Bodies Are left to read. I'm probably going to read Quicksilver next because that's going to take, I think, longer. And I'm really hoping that I like Home is Where the Bodies Are a lot. I have really high hopes for that book, but we'll see how we go. Yeah. So hopefully, fingers crossed, we get The Crimson Moth finished today. But I'll let you know very soon. Okay, we are back. I have my coffee. I'm just going to sit it underneath you. Try not to knock it off. In all likelihood, it's going to be me that knocks that, but... So I have read all of the books that my husband chose for this week. It has been a week. It's been a week. My lord. We have had a lot of rain, and so it's still quite not great on the lighting side of things, and we're meant to be going camping this weekend, so yay. All right, so we'll go quickly over the books. We'll go through the books. Pretty sure I didn't actually mention what any of the books about. A lot of it was just me complaining about books. Okay, so Bride. This really surprised me. I never thought I would enjoy any kind of an Ali Hazelwood book. She typically writes romance, and if you've watched any of my other videos, you could probably glean, if not know, that I don't like romance. I'm not a romance reader. I don't like romantasy. I'm not like a smut person. I don't do spice. It's just not for me. I get mad secondhand embarrassment as well, and if I get secondhand embarrassment from a book, the rating plummets basically. But this was genuinely surprising. I actually really quite enjoyed the actual premise of the book. So we are in this world, which is basically like our world, I guess. There is humans, vampires, and werewolves. They all have like their own areas that they live in, but they kind of just like coexist together, not so peacefully. Well, peacefully, but it's like strained peace. Misery is our main character. She, in her childhood, was a tributary. I don't know if that's the right word. We follow Misery, who is the daughter of the like head councilman of the vampires. She is obviously a vampire. She spent her childhood living in the human world because humans and vampires would trade important children and keep them as, I can't remember the word that they used, but like same as like in ancient times, olden days, not olden days, ancient times. Same as like in our history where children would be sent as basically like an insurance that you will toe the line and you won't like invade the land, because if you do, that child will get killed first. That's basically what she was. And so she spent her entire childhood until she came of age there, and then when she came back to the vampires area, she was basically an outcast. And so she feels like she fits in more with the humans because she obviously grew up with humans, but she just doesn't feel at home anywhere. So she's been living in the humans, or with the humans, and then one day she's summoned by her father and she is told that she has to marry the alpha male of the werewolves in order to keep some semblance of peace and save basically the vampires from annihilation. In amongst all of this, her best friend has gone missing. So that is her main reason for marrying the alpha, whose name is Lo, because her friend, who was an investigative journalist, her friend is human, and her friend has gone missing, and the one clue that she left behind is basically what she thinks is the alpha male's name. And so we just follow Misery and Lo as they sort of like navigate being married in like a forced marriage, and we eventually find out that werewolves have like a mate, and they, once they scent this mate, that is like, they know that that is the only person they will love. And turns out that Misery is Lo's mate somehow. It all sort of culminates in like this huge fight. They find out who, and I'm not going to give this spoiler because it kind of is one of the redeeming, I guess, features of the book. They find out who is behind her friend's disappearance, why her friend disappeared in the first place. There's kind of a couple of plot twists, and then Misery ends up coming back to Lo, and it kind of ends up living happily ever. They kind of just end up living like happily ever after. It wasn't, like I said, it wasn't the worst. I really enjoyed, as even though I've done a terrible job explaining it, I actually really enjoyed the book. I promise I'm getting better on explaining books. I'm actually trying really hard behind the scenes to like get better at explaining things. So eventually we'll get better at reviewing books, but unfortunately right now I feel like I'm not great. But yeah, anyway, so I really enjoyed this book. It was kind of an enemies to lovers, but they weren't really specifically enemies. It was just that their species are kind of enemies. There wasn't a whole lot of smut. There was like a couple of scenes in there, but I just glossed over those because I'm not interested. And there is a really cute, so Lo's little sister is adorable. Ali Hazelwood has done really well at writing that little sister. Like, her character is just so cute. But yeah, so quite enjoyed it. There wasn't really a whole lot that I didn't like. There was a lot of, I think, convenient plot points, and so while it didn't necessarily detract from the book, it just kind of made me go, oh, how convenient. And so yeah, like I said, not terrible, quite enjoyed it, really enjoyed the story. When I started reading it, was a bit worried it was going to be like Twilight, and it's not quite. There's no sparkly vampires, at least. And I gave it 3 stars. Next, I read She's Not Sorry by Mary Kubica. This I absolutely thought I would love. It is a mystery thriller, I guess. It has like everything that I would normally really enjoy in a book, and I did quite enjoy it, but it wasn't the 5-star read that I was expecting. So basically we are following Megan, and she is a ICU nurse, and there is this patient that comes in who everyone thinks has jumped from an overpass, and the only reason that she has survived is because she fell onto or between some train tracks rather than onto like a highway or something like that. And yeah, so we follow Megan as she tries to keep herself like emotionally detached from the family, but she starts becoming like really emotionally attached to like the parents of this girl that has jumped. And while all of this is going on, there is also actually a serial killer that is attacking women and violating women and obviously killing them because serial killer. And so it's not safe for women to be walking home at night. There is a friend of Megan's who is trying to like help her navigate all of this and like be her emotional support person. And in amongst all of this, Megan has a teenage daughter. She gets this, and this is I think the start of the book where it starts. She gets this phone call saying that her daughter has been kidnapped and she needs to pay a ransom of like $10,000. The book's actually in 2 parts, so that's like all the first half of the book. In the second half of the book, we actually find out who this patient is and how they are tied to Megan, and also like all of the loose ends are basically tied up. We find out like who the serial killer is. We find out what actually happened to the patient and how they ended up on the gravel between the 2 train tracks. And this one I don't want to give too much away because almost everything is a tell for the ending. I picked the ending on this very, very early on, I think. By say very early on, I would say about, I don't know, a third of the way through the book, I figured out what was going on. There are like little clues throughout the book as to who the killer is and how this lady ended up between the train tracks and like how it all ties to Megan. In saying that, it's not terribly written, it's just that it was very obvious. And I think that if you read a lot of mystery, thriller, or like murder mystery, you're going to be able to pick this one up or pick the ending on this one very, very quickly. This was my first Mary Kubica book. I felt like it was a pretty quick read. Like I got through the book really quickly and I enjoyed it. It just wasn't, like I said, a 5-star read for me. So I gave that one a 3 stars. Then I read Heartless Hunter who is it by? Kristen, I'm butchering the name again, Ciccarelli. I have some feelings on this one. We follow Rune, who is a socialite. The world that she lives in used to be full of witches. It was actually ruled by the 3 witch queens until they were overthrown by the rebellion, and the rebellion actually now controls the land. Spoilers, just so you're aware, I'm just going to go through some spoilers on this one. So Rune, there is a helicopter going over right now. GG, that timing. Alright, now the helicopter's gone. So Rune is a witch. She helps other witches to escape. She is basically the Crimson Moth. She gets that name because every witch has like a signature basically, and so in the aftermath of their spell casting there will be like an image that comes up or something like that, and hers is a Crimson Moth. Another one is like a butterfly that is mentioned in the book. And so she is trying to save one of the last like great witches that she's been like trying to find for years, and the leader of the witch hunters, Gideon, is also looking for this same witch, and he actually manages to find her before Rune does, and then she's just trying to basically break out this witch. And then plot twist, in order to hide who she is, Rune just basically pretends to be like this ditzy socialite, and her 2 best friends cover for her. I forgot the name of the female best friend. The male best friend is like Alex, and he is actually Gideon, the leader of the witch hunters. It's his brother. She ends up unsurprisingly falling for Gideon, and he finds out who she is. And then they find out that her female best friend is actually the surviving witch queen, so the youngest of the 3 witch queens, who Alex was meant to kill, and he didn't actually end up killing because he's a witch sympathizer. I really did not enjoy this book at all. I hated reading. Oh, I shouldn't say hate. I just really disliked reading it. It was just, everything was just too convenient. We're into Mary Sue. She conveniently has all of this money. She conveniently ends up with the most powerful, or like the leader of the witch hunters, and she conveniently is like a super powerful witch. Oh, that's the other thing. So the witches use blood in order to cast magic, and she collects her period blood in order to do magic. And so she's just only been using like old blood, and then the second that there is like all of this fresh blood, she is just this all-powerful witch, and like more powerful than the witch queen. And it is just all too convenient for me. Like, I understand that it's like, it's a fantasy, but it really irritates me when everything is just convenient. It's no fun for me. It's not fun at all. I just don't enjoy it. So I only gave that one star. I will never read it again. I'll never read anything in the series again. It's the first book in the series, and I'm just not finishing that series. I disliked that book immensely. So, like I said, 1 star. Next, I read Quicksilver by Callie Hart. I was a little bit worried about reading this one after reading Crimson Moth, because it seemed like they were kind of like written similarly. Like, obviously they have different themes or like different tropes and things, but, well, they didn't really have different tropes, but the writing seemed similar because they're for a similar audience. And so I was really worried going from Crimson Moth into Quicksilver, having like back-to-back 2 books that I didn't enjoy. It wasn't terrible, but it also wasn't 5 stars. So we follow Ceres, who lives in the 3rd district, which is like the plague district, or like the poor quarters. The city that she lives in is surrounded by desert, or it's in the middle of a desert, and water is like severely rationed in her district. Obviously the queen and everyone that lives in like the 1st district has a lot of water, but all of the water that the 3rd district gets is just like the runoff from the 1st quarter and 2nd quarter. Ceres steals the glove of one of the guards and then is arrested and taken up to the queen because she manages to kill like 2 of the guards. And the queen wants to know, obviously, like how she learned to fight like that, given that she's from the poor district. She shouldn't know any of this. I think, and I believe the queen was like trying to just see if there was like any rebels or that sort of thing. Ceres is ordered to be killed, and so she runs and grabs like the sword that's conveniently sitting in the room, and in doing so opens this Quicksilver portal to another place. There is like this guy that comes through the portal and grabs her. She thinks that he is like the devil or death, and so he takes her back through the portal with him. Turns out his name is Kingfisher, and I swear that's it. And he takes her basically back to the land of the elves, who she thought were just a fairy tale. Turns out they're not. They're run by a dictator, or overseen by a dictator. Like, his rule is absolute. Turns out that Ceres is actually an alchemist. People that they thought had died out a long time ago. Like, there's no current alchemists in existence that they're aware of. And the elves used to use alchemists to open Quicksilver portals in order to get to different places and to like trade and that sort of thing. And Ceres has to figure out how to become an alchemist within a week. I believe a week was the timeline that she was given by the elf king dude. Didn't like him. Really did not like his character at all. Actually, there was a lot of issues I think I had with this book, but I still kind of enjoyed it. Like, I enjoyed the concept. The concept could have been amazing. The delivery was really not great. I felt like it was very under-edited. It should have been... It kind of feels like a teenager wrote it, and then an editor was just like, yep, that's good enough, let's publish it. And because of that, there was a lot of just like disappointing parts. There was no build up, there was no tension, the world building was not great. I would have loved to have learnt more about the elves and their world and how their world functions. I would have loved to learn more about Ceres's world before she even got pulled into the elves, but we only get the bare minimum. We don't really know much about the queen. We don't really know much about the city, except that she lives in this poor district and everyone thinks that it's full of the plague because that's what they've been told by this queen. And we just know that they're in a desert and there's barely any water. But it would have been nice to know just a little bit more before she goes to the elves. And then, like I said, there's not very much. Like, I just feel like there's not enough about the elves either. Like, there's just a bare minimum world building in this. It's meant to be enemies to lovers, so Ceres is meant to like hate Kingfisher. I swear to God, that's his name. Ceres is like enemies, I guess, with Kingfisher. She just doesn't really like him, and then obviously because it's a romantic, she falls in love with him. So enemies to lovers. It just there is a lot of swearing in this book. Probably, and this is coming from an Australian, there was an overuse of swearing in this book. It felt like, I know it wasn't, but it felt like every other word was some kind of swearing, or cussing. Take your pick. So, yeah, didn't hate it. Didn't hate it as much as I hated Crimson Moth. That's probably why I was so generous with rating this one, because I did not like Crimson Moth. Could it have been good? Yes. If it was about half the length, it could have been amazing. It really needed better editing. I don't think it was worth the hype. I think it was very, very overhyped, and I only gave it 3 stars. And then I read, and I was very proud of actually getting through all 5 books this week. I read Homes Where the Bodies Are, and this lived up to all of my expectations. Again, I don't know if it was just because I had had 2 relatively disappointing reads before this, but this, I'm so glad I left this to last. It was strategic, and I'm glad. So we follow Beth, Nicole, and Michael. Beth has been looking after their terminally ill mother, who has just passed away in their childhood home. Michael is extremely successful and has moved like well away from home, and Nicole is a drug addict who Beth has just cut off. 7 years prior, their father had actually disappeared, and no one knows where he went or what happened. In their childhood, the little sister of Beth's boyfriend went missing and she was never found. And so I've forgotten his name, but he is back in town. So her ex-boyfriend, or her high school boyfriend, is back in town looking after his mother who has dementia. The mother asks for her ashes to be spread on their property, and there's a very good reason for that. But I'm not really going to go too much into that book because literally everything leads back to the plot twist at the end, which I guessed. I'm gonna say halfway through the book I figured out what was going on, but it didn't ruin it, which is nice. What I will say though is that as they are going through, so as Beth, Nicole, and Michael are going through their parents' things, they do find a video, and there is something on that video that is very damning of the parents. But yeah, so I love that. I'm so glad that I left that to last. I really, really enjoyed that, probably a lot more than I thought I would, and I'm glad that I read it now because that absolutely lives up to the hype, and I gave it 5 stars. So with all of those star ratings, I averaged it out, and it averaged to a star rating of 3. It probably would have been like a 4 if it wasn't for the Crimson Moth, but I really did not enjoy that book at all. Actually, my poor husband, I finished that book and it was like 10 o'clock at night, and I was just like, I'm sorry, but I have to come and rant to you because I was so frustrated with that book. That just really frustrated me. So my poor husband had to listen to me rant for like 10 minutes about how much I disliked that book. So yeah, I got all of my anger out before I recorded this. But yeah, so he did pretty good. I'm actually really happy with his picks. And I think we'll be getting him to do this on a yearly basis because I think it's quite fun. And I am always really interested in seeing what it is he thinks that I am interested in reading. So, and it really helps to just read different things. So like I never would have read Bride if it wasn't for him, and that was actually surprisingly pretty good. So yeah, I absolutely think I will be doing that again. I've really enjoyed myself. That being said, have you read any of these books? What did you think of them? Do you have any reading challenges that you think I would enjoy doing? If you like what I do here, please like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.